At 14, my parents locked me in my room for a week, called me a freak, then dumped me on Grandma's porch and drove away. Years later, they returned, polite, empty, asking for my inheritance to save their perfect son. I didn't rage. I set one rule. Their masks slipped. I was 14 when they left me at my grandmother's. They said it would be easier for everyone. Later, when they thought I couldn't hear, they called me a freak because of the seizures, because I reacted at the wrong times in the wrong ways, because I was never the version of daughter they'd ordered from the catalog. Years passed in a long, quiet stretch. Then one day they reappeared, very polite, very practical, asking me to return part of Grandma's inheritance so they could help my brother out of a mess. Funny how help and honesty only seemed to exist when the problem wasn't me. My first seizures came early. Epilepsy landed in my pediatric chart like a rubber stamp on the cover. My parents weren't ready. Emotionally, psychologically, pick a word. They looked at me the way you look at a malfunctioning appliance. Scary to touch, embarrassing to show guests. I learned young that the rules for me were different from the rules for my brother. Colton is 3 years older. With him, everything was simple, well-behaved, straight report cards, no surprises. I was not simple. Some days my body turned into an electrical storm and my brain into a room where someone cut the lights. That was only the first tile in the mosaic. At 8, they added dyslexia to the list. The words ran on the page, smearing like somebody had spilled water on the alphabet. Later came ADHD, the heavy kind. Imagine a child with too much current and too much break at the same time. With a child like that, you don't scold, you learn. Slow explanations, adjusted routines, steady support. My parents chose distance and annoyance instead. It's too much of a burden, they told friends in that practical tone people use for weather and car trouble. But children were their choice, and being ready for the unexpected was part of that choice. It's like they decided that because the first kid arrived without surprises, the second one would too. When I was already here, there was no choice left, only relationship. And they worked very hard to teach me I was a mistake to be tolerated. It's hard to call my childhood fun or normal, not only because of diagnoses, mostly because of how those diagnoses were met at home. Most of my early problems weren't medical, they were the empty spaces I ran into. I would walk into a room and conversations would go flat. Before I turned 10, I could already hear the hush, half tone, half flinch. It got worse as I got older. My mind was thin glass. The constant sense that people were embarrassed by me was too much. By middle school and into 14, I started to split at the seams, arguing, shouting, slamming doors. Hormones helped, sure, but the main ingredient was the house where I had never once been wanted. It isn't the illness that breaks a heart. It's being left alone inside it. I stopped trying at school. I tanked classes on purpose, like I was signing my name under their decision to write me off. I got stubborn, sharp, mean, pushed away everyone, even the few friends who kept trying to stay. I knew I was acting stupid, but misery leaves you short on options. This was how I made myself visible. Whenever the school called about my behavior, my parents would show up tired, look over my shoulder, and sigh as if the real question was how soon they could leave. At home, I made scenes, not because I love drama, but because any ordinary sentence shattered against their concrete indifference. "Act normal," they'd say, rolling their eyes, and switch the subject. That was the maximum attention available. It hurt more than yelling. At 14, I crossed a line. I brought a vape to school and took a drag in the middle of English class. The teacher told me to shut it off and step into the hallway. I gave him the finger, childish and stupid at the same time. Up to that day, people found ways to excuse my stunts. My parents would assure everyone I was not all there and needed special patience. After that scene, there was no rewinding. I got expelled. That was the single moment my parents truly got angry. At home, they crushed me with sentences that still tighten my throat. Nothing I didn't already know, but hearing it out loud is different. They said they regretted ever deciding to have me, that if they'd known in advance I would be this crazy, this defective, they would have ended the pregnancy, that I was a burden and life had been so much better back when they had only one son. They promised to do whatever it takes to get rid of me, to never let me ruin their lives again. They punished me for a week by locking me in my room. Not a metaphor, a real latch on the outside. Bathroom by permission. Meals on a tray. No talking. I lay on the bed and felt like an inmate in solitary. Worse, actually. Prison guards weren't supposed to be your parents. I hadn't committed a crime. I was a teenager begging for attention in the clumsiest ways. They were supposed to be the adults, and they weren't. Yes, I was hard to handle. Illnesses aren't dollhouses. Adulthood is measured precisely where it hurts. They wanted children by the manual. They got me, a living, complicated person, and decided the flaw was in me, not in their gaze. After a week of isolation, I learned what "you are no longer part of this family" sounds like. In the morning, my mother said, "Pack your things." I put a hoodie, notebooks, a charger, my meds, and a seizure action card into a backpack. Mom and my brother filled boxes. I sat in the car and tried not to think. An hour later, we were on the road. The streets were familiar. After a few turns, I knew where we were headed. My grandmother's house. My father's mother. I told myself it was for a couple of weeks. Maybe the adults wanted to let everyone cool off. Grandma was strict, but she'd always been honest and kind with me. It didn't feel like punishment. Until the porch. They unloaded my things, left them by the door, and said, "Bring it in. This is your home now." They added that they didn't want any further contact, especially after what you did. They said I'd tried to ruin their reputation, that I had crossed a line, and there's no going back. I stood in the doorway and begged them not to do this. For all my talk about being independent, 14 is still a child who wants a place in their own family. Being left felt like finding out you're the extra box on the curb. I was also scared for Grandma. She was in her 60s, a widow, not rich. I knew she loved me, but I didn't know if she wanted me or if she could manage me. I felt like I was changing from a burden on my parents into a burden on her. I didn't want to disappoint her. When I stayed with her before and she heard about my disasters, she got angry, yes, but she always backed me up. "You're strong. You'll figure it out." She kept telling me my parents would come around if I learned to hold myself together. That was another reason the move scared me. What if she got tired too and started to hate me? I couldn't afford to lose her. Everything was tangled. I asked my parents to reconsider. They said the decision was made. Right in front of me, they calmly told my grandmother, "We're done." Then they added they didn't want a freak like her in their house anymore and needed to focus on our perfectly normal son. I'd heard words like that from school bullies and had learned to let them slide off. Hearing them from my parents was a knife to the back, followed by an apology for getting blood on the rug. It was the day I understood the biggest bullies in my life didn't live at school. Ugly truth? They did me a favor by sending me to Grandma's. Nothing I did would have earned me their love, not even becoming perfect. So I stopped begging. I accepted that I lived with Grandma now, and I decided to get better, for myself and for her. When the car pulled away and the house settled, we sat at the kitchen table. That talk was overdue for both of us. She was honest. She loved me, but she hadn't been ready. She'd hesitated. She'd heard from my father what a problem I was, and at her age she wasn't sure she could manage me without breaking both of us. She didn't know if she could build a life where I could grow instead of implode. That's why she needed a week to say yes. Then she told me my father had let something slip. I punished her, locked her in the room for a week. That was her final straw. Your father isn't the adult you need, she said, and apologized for not stepping in sooner. She had her reasons: widow, limited means, health. But once she knew the details, she also knew why I acted the way I did. She decided to give me a real chance to do things right. Not like my parents, through shame and punishment, but the adult way: support, boundaries, respect. Treat this as an opportunity, Grandma said. I'll try to be the adult who stays. You try to be the teenager who moves forward. I apologized for the chaos I'd caused. I told her I forgave her for not taking me earlier, even though she knew how I was being treated. We agreed to leave the past behind and to work on the future. I'm still grateful for that evening, for the plain words that held more love than all my parents' careful, "We did our best." After that day, I turned my life over. Not at once, inch by inch, habit by habit. Grandma helped. She found tutors in reading and math so I could catch up. She met with the school to make sure I wasn't equalized, but actually accommodated. And later, when it was obvious my old school was chewing me up, she filed the papers and got me into a private program with support. Teachers who knew my diagnoses ahead of time and didn't treat me like a normal kid who just needed a hallway scolding. The difference was enormous. No one used my conditions as an excuse. No one pretended they didn't exist. With that foundation, the once impossible happened. I finished high school with good grades and got into college. Like any other teenager with a plan, I learned to set targets and move toward them. For that, I thank my grandmother. Only her. My parents would drop by Grandma's once in a while. They never saw me. Every time they came, I slipped out and didn't return till they were gone. They didn't seem to mind. I didn't either. It went on like that for a couple of years, until the day Grandma snapped. They showed up with the same old lines: my awful temperament, the shame I brought the family, and the same refusal to admit where they'd stopped being parents. They called me a rotten apple, a freak. For the first time in a long time, Grandma raised her voice. She told them not to come back, and they listened. In this one way, they were consistent. Their pride never let them admit the obvious. We haven't spoken in almost 10 years. It turned out to be easier than I expected. We lived as if those people who once called themselves my family simply didn't exist, not out of spite, because otherwise the quiet turned back into noise. In those years, I crossed a lot of markers. Finished high school, got into college and stayed, rented my own place, found work, learned how to pay bills on time and how to fry eggs so the whites stay in a circle, not a cloud. Grandma's trick. Through all of it, I didn't speak to my parents once. They didn't try either. My accounts were open. I never blocked them. Any hay would have arrived just fine. They chose silence, like picking wallpaper you don't have to notice, something that won't remind you a home was ever lived in. Sometimes I almost messaged first. Then I'd hear the click of that latch from the week they locked me in, feel the air go thicker than water in my chest, and the urge would pass. They reached out only after she died. For months after the funeral, I walked like my legs were cotton. She was the adult who stood on my side even when I convinced myself there was no side. We hadn't lived together the last few years. I'd moved to study, then to be closer to work. But she was still my brace. One phone call. "I'm listening." That was enough to pull the scattered pieces back into a person. Without her, the kitchen sounded different. The ticking clock became breathing. The funeral was quiet. I chose the flowers myself, her porch roses and plain white lilies. People didn't say much at the gathering after. Later, the lawyer read the will. The house to me. The savings, too. Not riches for the ages, but enough that rent and the dentist didn't feel like cliffs. Tucked into the documents was a note in her hand. Zoya, take care of yourself, make plans, don't live by punishments. I slid the note into her old recipe notebook, the page with lemon pie, where she'd scribbled in red, "Skip the sugar. You're already sweet." Not 6 months passed before the knock came. There they were on my porch. Polite faces, polished condolences, my mother gripping a folder, my father the door frame. I let them talk, just in case they were here to apologize. A couple of sentences later, we arrived at the real point. Their perfectly normal, healthy son was not, in fact, fine. In college, he experimented, then lost control. Now it was hitting his classes, his job, his everything. He needed help. Paid rehab. Inpatient. No more low-cost programs. The words stuck in their mouths, but the meaning was perfectly clear. They needed money. Mine. I asked why he couldn't start with the cheaper options, groups, outpatient, anything within reach. We tried, they said. Not enough. He needed a clinic farther away, longer, with real specialists. It would be expensive. They said the word like a spell that opens wallets. They didn't name a figure, but I could see it gathering on my father's lips, rehearsed. I'm not a rehab expert, and I wasn't going to become one overnight. I knew other things. I have a job, a paycheck, savings. Grandma had a house and careful investments layered since Grandpa's time. Lucky for me. Less lucky for them. For years, they were too proud to keep a relationship. Too proud to say sorry, even as the numbers would have helped. And now, suddenly, we're family. Help us. I said I would. Any reasonable amount. One condition. They had to acknowledge publicly what they did to me. Not whispered over a sink, not texted, not hidden between lines, publicly, a letter to the family, a post in our group chat, an email round to the cousins, whichever. Own the words they used on me. Own how they treated my grandmother. Own that they need my help now, and explain why. We kept the peace for a decade because Grandma hated drama. But when people come asking for money after all that, honesty stops being a luxury. It's paying the bill. I didn't feel guilty about the condition. I wanted the truth in the room so it would stop gnawing at me. It wasn't blackmail. It was shelving the story where it belongs, so it can't keep rewriting itself. The condition was simple as a switch. This side is light, that side is dark. Choose. Their faces lengthened. They tried to bargain. Called me unfair. Called me selfish. I repeated myself. It's my condition. Take it or leave it. I wasn't hoarding money. I had no grudge against my brother and barely any anger left for them, but I needed honesty. Without it, money isn't help. It's a continuation of the old lie through a different account. They changed tactics. How could you? He's in trouble. I asked where they'd been when I was in trouble. Silence. My mother said, "We didn't know what to do." I said, "You can always start by not locking a child in a room." They left. Long sighs, accusations, hints that these things shouldn't be made public. A few days later, the messages started. First words, then photos of my brother, bad light, hollow cheeks, empty eyes. Here is the person who needs your help. I looked and felt pain. Pain, yes. Guilt, no. Alongside the ache rose that old buried thought. Where were you when I needed help? If they wanted mine now, they'd have to put down their pride. Not for me. For him. I answered once. The condition stands. A public admission. No ifs, no buts. I didn't argue after that. Clear rules are easy. They only feel hard to people who have never had to be wrong. 10 days later, they came back, with my brother. They stood at my doorway like an exhibit. He stared at his shoes. His fingers worried a seam on his hoodie sleeve, and I saw myself at 14, twisting a lamp cord while people told me to act normal. The humiliation belonged to him first. "Zoya," he said, very quiet. "This isn't your scene," I said, equally quiet. "Come by yourself, and we'll talk." My parents got loud. "We're together!" "We are a family." I said I'd speak to him when he wanted to come on his own. No audience. They pushed. Wanted a yes on the spot. I said if they didn't leave, I'd call the police and start the paperwork for a restraining order. That cooled them. As they walked away, my father tossed, "You and your grandma are the most selfish people on the planet." Funny word, coming from someone who once left me on a porch because they didn't want the work of a child who needed help. Funnier still how quickly they forget. The perfect child they loved. The real one they couldn't. After that, I finally did what I should have done sooner. Blocked their numbers. Moved to another neighborhood. Told the relatives, the address is for no one. Last time somebody decided parents deserve to know where their daughter lives and handed it over. Now there would be no more deserves. "If you share it, I cut contact," I said. One cousin hesitated. He chose me. I made a list of what I intended to keep. First, quiet. Second, memory. Third, what Grandma actually taught. Not money, a way to live. Mondays are budget check. Wednesdays are long walks without headphones. Weekends are for the roses by the steps. I keep her house together. Fix the stairs, replace the porch screen, and write expenses in her paper planner where neat lines share a page with underlined reminders like, "Call Zoya." Sometimes a pressed petal falls from between the pages, a small proof that beauty can be archived too. The messages kept coming. The tone kept shifting. Accusations, then requests, then threats to expose the truth, then requests again. Somewhere in the middle of that, I noticed the old tremor was gone. Inside felt level, like water in a cup held with both hands. I learned to set boundaries and not explain them forever. Boundaries aren't walls, they're maps. This is open, this is closed. This entrance requires respect. I think about my brother a lot. In the evenings, sitting on the steps, listening to the trees move. I picture him coming alone one day. No parents, no directors. I put on the kettle. We sit. He says, "I'm sorry." I say, "You too." We look up a program that actually fits. I pay for it, not to repay the past, but to invest in his present. That's a different story. I'll be ready when he is. A week after their first visit, I wrote the rule one more time. No public admission, no money. I knew the will left everything to me. The lawyer had mailed the letters, so they knew it too. They would have to sit with their choices. I wasn't holding the line to win. I was holding it so I could stop lying to myself that it wasn't that bad. It was. Name it. That same night, I didn't sleep. Not from fear, memory. The house still held the echo of my 14-year-old lockdown, the snap of the latch, the tray on the floor, the hush in the hallway. I made tea and wrote myself a letter, the admission I keep waiting to hear from them. "Zoya, what they did was wrong. You were a child. They locked you in and used words you don't say to children. It wasn't your fault I read it out loud and filed it with the important papers. Sometimes growing up is saying the true thing to yourself in the voice you didn't have." A month later, I opened a separate account. The Evelyn Fund, small but steady. From it, I pay for tutors and camps and audiobooks for kids who get stamped with diagnoses like barcodes. Modest grants. No social posts. Just a hang-in-there note and a first receipt paid. Sometimes that's enough to stop someone's world from tilting. The first transfer went to a girl in the next city, Mia, whose letters run away from her the way mine used to, while her teacher calls it laziness. I read her thank you 3 times and cried 3.5. Work ticks along. Mornings I jog the block. Evenings I read out loud, slowly, the way my reading specialist taught me back then. The words don't sprint anymore. They walk. I'm learning to like their pace. Once a week I write lists, errands, groceries, what to talk about with myself. Strange items appear. Buy lemons. Check the smoke alarm batteries. Tell yourself it's working. I buy, I check, I tell. It's therapy, but homemade. Sometimes I dream about my parents' house. I walk in and no one is there. The walls hold photos where I'm missing too. I hear my own footsteps and know how not to be scared of the silence. A small victory, but mine. In one dream, I opened the fridge and there was Grandma's lemon pie. No sugar. Yours sweet enough. I woke up tasting citrus and relief. If my brother ever calls on his own, I'll answer. No conditions. I'm here, I'll say. The rest we can do like grown-ups, with the honesty I wasn't given. Maybe we'll repair one thread in this cracked family pattern. If not, I'll still know I did what I could. I wonder sometimes why admitting the obvious is impossible for some people. Then I look at the note above my desk. Pride is a suit tailored to someone else's measurements and worn to rags. I'm done with costumes. I want clothes that fit. Honesty, quiet, and the people who stay by choice, not paperwork. I close this and go water the roses by the steps. They're still steady and straight, not because someone told them to be, because they have a trellis and light. That's what Grandma taught me. Support and light. The rest grows. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. See you in the next video. At my daughter's 11th birthday, my mom gave her a deodorant with a note. Use it to make friends. Everyone laughed, including her classmates. My daughter was holding back tears. The next day, they regretted everything. It started like one of those picture-perfect mornings you see in detergent commercials. Sunlight spilling through clean windows, balloons taped to walls, a cake that looked almost professional, almost, and my daughter Zoe pacing in front of the mirror, reciting imaginary conversations with her crush. I was the narrator of chaos, armed with a spatula and misplaced optimism. You look beautiful, I told her, for the 5th time. She frowned at her reflection. You think Jamie's going to notice my hair? I think if he doesn't, we'll pretend he's legally blind. That earned half a smile. Progress. The thing about being 11 is that everything is either the best day of your life or the end of the world. Zoe had already had enough end-of-the-world days for 1 year, small humiliations that cling to a kid like static. The smell jokes at school, the whispers, the giggles when she walked past. She showered twice a day now, applied perfume like it was armor. Today was her redemption arc. The guest list had been strategic. Her classmates, a few of their parents, and unfortunately, my family. Because appearances, because guilt. Because I was still the daughter who over-explained everything to people who never listened. By noon, the house smelled like sugar and nerves. Zoe stood by the window, fingers twisting the hem of her dress as cars pulled up. First came the friends, bright voices, sneakers, gift bags. Then the doorbell rang again, and the atmosphere shifted. "Mom's here!" my sister Chelsea called from the porch, her voice sing-song and smug. Of course she was early. Chelsea swept in wearing heels that clicked like punctuation marks, kids in tow, Paige, 12 and already a carbon copy of her mother, and Lucas, 9 and wild-eyed. "You look so festive," Chelsea said, scanning the streamers. "It's cute." Cute. The word people use when they mean amateur. "Thanks," I said. My mom followed, purse slung over one arm, smile stretched thin. "Well, look at our birthday girl." Zoe straightened automatically. "Hi, Grandma." 11 already, Mom said, kissing the air near her cheek. "You're growing up so fast." "We'll have to keep an eye on the boys." She laughed like she'd invented humor. Jamie arrived 10 minutes later. Zoe froze, panicked, then whispered, "Oh my God, he's here," like it was a warning siren. She greeted him, cheeks pink, voice wobbly. I watched from the kitchen, heart split between pride and the urge to build a moat around her. For a while, it went well. Music, cake, laughter. I started to believe we might make it through the day intact. Then came the gifts. Paige went first, lip gloss set. Lucas gave a comic book. Safe. Harmless. Chelsea handed over a sparkly phone case for when you finally get a real phone, which was both generous and pointed. And then my mother stepped forward, clutching a small, neatly wrapped box. "This one's from Grandma," she said brightly. "Something practical." That word, practical. It sent a quiet chill through me. Zoe tore off the paper. The room leaned in. Inside was a stick of deodorant. Vanilla scent. Cheap brand. Taped to the side, a note in my mother's familiar handwriting. "Use it to make friends." For one perfect, paralyzed second, no one breathed. Then laughter rippled through the room. First the adults, then Paige, then Lucas, then the kids, even the ones who'd been kind before. The noise spread like wildfire. Jamie laughed too. That one hurt. Zoe didn't move. Her hands tightened around the box. Her face went blank, the way a screen does before it shuts off. "Mom," I said sharply. "What?" My mother blinked, feigning innocence. "It's a joke!" "Everyone's laughing." "Exactly. Everyone was laughing." Zoe's lip trembled. She tried to smile, failed, and whispered, "Excuse me," before bolting down the hallway. The laughter stuttered to a stop. Chelsea leaned back in her chair, half smirking. "Oh, come on, Jenna." "She's sensitive, isn't she? You were like that too." Paige giggled, whispering something to a friend. I stood there, plate in hand, every muscle tight. "She's 11. "It was harmless," Mom said. "A little humor never hurt anyone." "Right," I said. "That's why you've got decades of happy memories with me." She frowned. "Don't start." Too late. I'd already started. But Zoe's door slammed upstairs, and the sound swallowed my fury. I set the plate down, hands shaking, and said quietly, "I'll go check on her." "Jenna," Chelsea sighed, "you really should learn to take a joke." I looked at her, then at the half-eaten cake, the glitter decorations, the kids exchanging whispers, and thought, I've been taking jokes my whole life. Upstairs, Zoe sat on her bed, knees pulled to her chest, the wrapping paper crumpled beside her. "She did it on purpose," she said, voice raw. "She knew." "I know," I said, sitting beside her. "They're never going to forget. Everyone's going to talk about it at school." Jamie laughed. That last word broke. I didn't have a speech ready. All I could do was wrap my arms around her and whisper, "I'm so sorry." Downstairs, laughter started again, fainter, like ghosts who didn't know they were dead. I pressed my hand against Zoe's back, feeling every tremor. It wasn't the first time my mother had ruined a birthday, but it was the last. Zoe lifted her head, eyes wet. "She hates me." "No," I said. "She doesn't care enough to hate." "But I do." Her breath hitched. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Fix it. Because that's what mothers do. When the world breaks their children, they build something stronger from the pieces." Downstairs, my family laughed at another joke I couldn't hear. And I thought, laugh while you can. The next day, they regretted everything. It wasn't the first birthday they'd ruined with a joke. Zoe didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. Every time the floor creaked, I heard the party again. Laughter, my mother's voice, the sound of Zoe's chair scraping back. Funny how memory keeps the sound fresh. Chelsea used to say I was born embarrassed. She wasn't wrong. She was the older one. Blonde, confident, the kind of girl who could insult you and make you thank her for the attention. I was bookish, cautious, allergic to eye contact. At school, she had orbiters. I had library fines. At home, she had applause. I had advice. "Loosen up," Mom would say when Chelsea mimicked the way I walked. "She's teasing," Dad added, like that made it wholesome. Laughter always followed, filling the kitchen, bouncing off the refrigerator until it stuck to me. There was a birthday, mine, 15 maybe, where Chelsea convinced her friends to hide my gifts. When I started to panic, she held up one box with a ribbon and said, "Here's one." Hope it fits your personality. Inside was a joke. T-shirt, world's most sensitive person. Mom laughed so hard she cried. That sound never leaves you. I used to think adulthood would fix everything, that once we all had taxes and back pain, the cruelty would stop. It doesn't. It just gets manners. Chelsea became the success story. Marketing job, perfect hair, a social calendar that looked exhausting. I went into software. Quiet work, clean numbers, no audience. My now husband Daniel did the same. We built a life that ran on code and caffeine, steady, uneventful, safe. When my parents' car needed tires, I paid. When their roof leaked, I sent the transfer before they asked. They called me a good daughter, which in our family is code for the reliable one, not the favorite. Chelsea never had to be reliable. She had charisma, and charisma doesn't pay bills. It collects them. A few months before Zoe's birthday, we'd gone to Paige's, 12 years old and already fluent in superiority. The party looked like a commercial, matching decor, catering, a professional photographer catching every perfect angle. Mom gave Paige a designer purse. Chelsea had obviously picked it out. Everyone clapped like it was a coronation. I remember Zoe whispering, "Do you think Grandma will get me something like that?" I said, "Maybe." I lied. Back in Zoe's room, hours after the party, she sat at her desk tracing circles on the wrapping paper. I could see she was replaying every laugh. That night, I thought about that purse and the deodorant sitting in the trash downstairs. 2 gifts, 2 messages. One said, "You're special." The other said, "You smell." People pretend intention is invisible, but you can always smell it. Daniel found me later, sitting in the hallway, lights off. "She's still awake," he said softly. "I know." He waited. "You okay?" I almost laughed. "That depends on which decade you mean." He rubbed his neck. "You can't control what they do." "Maybe not," I said. "But I can stop pretending it's harmless. You know that point where anger turns into clarity? It's sharp, almost clean. That's where I woke up. I didn't drink my coffee. I armed myself with it. The laptop was already open on the kitchen counter, the cursor blinking like it had been waiting years for this moment. Click 1. Transfer canceled. Click 2. Card account closed. Click 3. Utilities. Gone. The house stayed silent except for the tapping of keys and the sound of my pulse in my ears. I wasn't shaky. I was steady. That's what scared me a little. Daniel wandered in halfway through, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning. You're up early." "I'm busy," I said. He blinked at the screen. "Busy doing what?" "Freedom paperwork." "You mean exactly what it looks like." He leaned against the doorframe, hair sticking up, trying to figure out whether to stop me. "You're really doing this?" "I already did." "They'll freak out." "Good. Do you want me to call your mom later?" "Smooth things," I laughed, loud, fast, almost ugly. "Smooth things over?" That's her job. She's been polishing her image for decades. That shut him up. When I finished, I sat back. The air felt different, lighter, like something toxic had finally burned out. By lunchtime, the phone started buzzing. I ignored the first few, let the notifications stack. The vibrations sounded like applause. At 2, I picked up Zoe from school. She looked tired but not broken, the way soldiers look in movies after surviving the explosion. "How was it?" I asked. "Fine." That word meant awful, but I didn't die. I reached into the back seat and handed her a small shopping bag. Inside, a soft green sweater and a voucher for a haircut. "What's this?" "Something to start over with." She smiled without showing teeth. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." That night, she tried on the sweater and spun once in front of the mirror. The smile stayed this time. Small, but real. At 9:03 p.m., my phone rang. Mom, glowing on the screen. I answered because I wanted to hear the performance. "Jenna," she said sweetly, "we didn't get your transfer this month." You must have forgotten I didn't. A pause. I could hear the air tighten on her end. "You stopped sending it?" "Correct." "Your father and I rely on that money. We've always relied on you. Maybe you should rely on yourselves." Her voice dropped an octave. "This is because of that silly party thing, isn't it?" "That silly party thing was your granddaughter's birthday." "Oh, please." She needs to toughen up. "Or maybe you need to stop throwing punches and calling it love." She sighed dramatically. "You've always been ungrateful. And you've always been cruel. You'll regret this." "I already did," I said, and hung up. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Chelsea. Of course. "Wow," she said, skipping hello. "You really went nuclear." "I went necessary. Mom's crying. She should try therapy. It's quieter. You can't cut people off because of a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a public execution." "Oh my God, Jenna, it was a joke!" Paige thought it was hilarious. Paige also thinks TikTok pranks are a personality. Do you have to be so dramatic? Do you have to be so predictable? You're destroying this family. "No," I said. "I'm saving mine." I hung up before she could come up with something clever. By midnight, the relatives had formed a tag team. Aunt Lisa texted, "Your poor mother is heartbroken." Uncle Ron called to say, "Family doesn't turn its back like this." A cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years left a voicemail that started with, "We're all worried about you," and ended with, "Grow up." I replied to none of them. Silence is heavier than words when you've spent a lifetime being told to shut up. But I did pour another glass of wine and toast the quiet. Saturday morning. Another call. Same number. This time I answered, just to end the suspense. It was Mom again, but her sweetness had curdled. "You think cutting us off makes you better? Wait until Zoe grows up and hates you for it." I smiled into the receiver. If she hates me for protecting her, I can live with that. She started to yell, but I hung up halfway through ungrateful. The phone buzzed 3 more times. I turned it face down and said out loud, to no one, "That's enough." Later that day, Zoe and I went out for Christmas decorations. The store was crowded, glitter everywhere, the kind of chaos that smells like cinnamon and regret. She picked white lights. I picked red. We argued. We bought both. At the register, she hesitated. "Grandma usually helps with this part." "Not this year." "Because of me?" "Because of them." Her shoulders dropped. Relief. Understanding. "Good," she said. I swear, that one word felt better than any therapy session I'd ever skipped. That night, Daniel found me on the porch again. I was drinking cheap wine and pretending it was Victory champagne. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so." "They'll be furious." "Let them be." He smiled. "You really mean it?" I do. He nodded toward my phone on the table. Are you going to keep it off forever? Maybe, I said. Maybe I'll answer next time. Just to hang up twice. He laughed, but I wasn't joking. A few days later, Zoe came home with that mix of excitement and fear only middle school can invent. Mom, she said, breathless. Someone posted a clip from my birthday. I froze. What clip? The deodorant thing. She bit her lip. You can see Grandma handing it to me and everyone laughing. My stomach turned. Do you want me to take it down? She shook her head. No, it's not mean this time. People are mad at them. The comments are all like, who does that to a kid? I watched the video. 30 seconds of cruelty, broadcast like evidence. The laughter sounded smaller on screen. The note, when it came into focus, use it to make friends, looked ridiculous, petty. Do you want me to report it? I asked again. Zoe thought for a long moment. No, let people see what it really was. Her voice was steady. No shame, no tremor. Just a kid taking her story back. I reached for her hand. Okay, we'll let it stay that night, she hummed while helping me untangle the lights for the tree. The house felt warm again, alive. I sat down and realized that for the first time in forever, no one was laughing at us. Only for us. A few quiet weeks. That's all the peace we managed before the next storm. I was starting to think the silence might mean they'd finally given up. No calls, no emails, no guilt trips. Even Zoe seemed lighter, still wary, but laughing again. The house had started to sound like a home instead of an autopsy room. Then Thursday happened. I was pulling into the school parking lot when I saw them. 3 familiar figures by the front gate. Mom, Chelsea, and my father, pretending to check his watch while standing sentry. Zoe was in the middle of them, her backpack half slipped off one shoulder, her face white. They were talking fast, smiling too wide. That smile my family uses when they're saying something awful but want to look like saints. By the time I slammed the car door, I could already hear pieces of it. Sweetheart, you know we didn't mean anything bad. You love your grandma, don't you? If you'd just laughed, none of this would have happened. Every sentence was another hook thrown into her, and she was sinking. I walked faster. Mom spotted me first and did that fake surprise thing. Oh, Jenna! We were just saying hello. Get away from her. Don't be ridiculous, Chelsea said. We're trying to fix what you broke. Zoe's eyes filled. She looked from them to me like a deer surrounded by traffic. Zoe, Mom said, soft now, twisting the knife. You could make this all go away. Just tell your mother you want to see us again. That's when I stopped pretending to be civilized. Back. Away. From. My daughter. The words came out calm, clipped, surgical. Every parent at the gate turned to stare. Mom's smile froze. We're just talking. No, I said. You're rewriting history. I took Zoe's hand and walked her to the car. Nobody said another word. The air felt electric. The kind of silence right before thunder hits. In the car, Zoe kept wiping at her face. They said I ruined everything, she whispered. That if I'd just laughed, you wouldn't hate them. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles clicked. They want you to feel guilty so they don't have to. She stared out the window. Maybe I did make it worse. No, I said. You told the truth with your face. That's what scares them. She didn't answer. When we got home, she went straight to her room. Daniel met me in the hallway. What happened? They were waiting for her after school. He went pale. You're kidding. Do I look like I'm kidding? He hesitated. Maybe I should call your mom. Try to... I laughed, sharp and humorless. Try to what? Negotiate terms of sanity? That night, I poured a glass of wine, sat at my desk, and called Kevin Chu, a lawyer and a friend. Kevin answered on the second ring. Jenna. Long time no crisis. They cornered my kid at school. A pause. Cornered? 3 of them. Told her she wrecked the family, made her cry in front of everyone. I want it in writing that they stay the hell away. He didn't even sigh this time. I'll draft the letter tonight. Cease and desist, plus a copy for the school administration. You sure you want to go nuclear? They already did, I said. He chuckled softly. Fair. I'll send it for your approval before morning. When I hung up, I felt that strange mix of fury and relief, like holding a live wire and realizing it's finally grounded. Near midnight, I found Zoe awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed. She looked up. Mom, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm the reason this got so big. I sat beside her. Listen to me. They hurt you, and when people like that get caught, they always look for someone smaller to blame. That doesn't make it your fault. It just makes them cowards. Her chin trembled. But they're family. Blood isn't a hall pass, I said. She laughed once, watery. You sound like a movie quote. Then maybe movies get some things right. We stayed like that until her breathing steadied. By morning, the letter was in my inbox. Formal, cold, perfect. Reading it felt like exhaling for the first time in years. Kevin had added a line I hadn't asked for. Any future contact will be considered harassment. Bless that man. I forwarded it to the principal and then, for good measure, to Mom's email with the subject line. Boundaries. No message body. Just the attachment. Hit send. A few weeks later, December crept in. The house filled with pine and sugar and the sound of Zoe singing again. She'd started inviting friends over, real friends, not the kind who laughed because someone told them to. I caught her one night helping a classmate decorate the tree. She was talking, smiling easily, the way light falls on someone who's stopped bracing for impact. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. Mom, flashing across the screen. I let it ring once, twice. Then I pressed block. Christmas came and it was quiet. No fake laughter, no tension heavy enough to slice. Just friends, lights, real smiles. For the first time in forever, the house felt like it actually belonged to us. A few relatives still try calling. Family doesn't cut off family, one text said. I left it on read. Peace is louder when you don't answer. Word gets around, though. Apparently my parents are having a hard time. The roof's leaking again, the car needs repairs, and my sister, who posts photos from 5-star brunches, hasn't offered a dime. Mom's been telling everyone it's so unfair that I stopped helping. I call that karma with a warranty. And Paige? She found herself a new target at school. It didn't go well. The principal called it behavioral bullying. She's been quieter lately. Consequences do that to people. Zoe and I had a perfect day. Small, messy, full of real laughter. The kind that doesn't sting. We're careful now about who we let in. Turns out, less family can sometimes mean more peace. Sometimes I think about calling them. Then I remember the silence that followed when I finally hung up. How light the air felt. How clean. So, was I right to cut them off or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more. At her cousin's birthday, my 7-year-old was forced to stand outside for 6 hours, watching all the other grandkids celebrate without her. This party is not for cheaters, kids, my mother-in-law told her. I didn't shout. I did this. 3 hours later, their lives started to collapse. My daughter Ruby had been vibrating about this party for a week. She'd drawn Harper 3 different birthday cards because the first 2 weren't special enough. She'd practiced what she'd say when she handed over the present. She'd even asked me if I thought Grandma Linda would sit next to her this time. So as I walked up the familiar path to Linda's house that afternoon, I already had my standard pickup line loaded. Did you have fun? Did you eat too much cake? Did you? And then I saw her. She was standing on the side of the porch, right by the railing, not talking to anyone, not moving, just there, in the same blue dress I'd dropped her off in, hair still in the half-up style we'd done together that morning, party shoes, no coat. I lifted my hand and waved. "Hey, Bug." She didn't wave back. That shouldn't have been a big deal, but it was the first tiny crack. It wasn't freezing outside. No visible breath in the air, nothing dramatic. Just that damp, early spring chill that's fine for car to door, but miserable if you stand still in it long enough. Ruby's shoulders were hunched in a way I recognized from soccer fields. The "I'm cold, but no one told me I'm allowed to say it" hunch. I quickened my steps. "Ruby?" I tried again. She turned her head a little, like it took effort. Her face came into view in pieces, flushed cheeks, but not from running around. Patchy redness around her eyes. The shiny look you get when you're out of fresh tears, but not out of feelings. Her lips were dry and pressed together. Up close, I saw her hands. She was holding them against the skirt of her dress, fingers curled, knuckles pink from cold. My stomach did a slow, heavy roll. "What are you doing out here?" I asked. I kept my voice light, like we were playing a game and I hadn't realized it yet. "Did you come out for air?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked past me toward the front window. I followed her gaze. Through the glass, I saw the end of a party. Crumpled paper plates, pizza boxes stacked on the counter, Harper in a plastic tiara, laughing with her other cousins, her mother Amber moving around with a trash bag, my mother-in-law Linda at the far end, leaning over to wipe frosting off some younger kid's face, smiling in that best grandma way she likes to project. It looked exactly like the scene Ruby had been imagining, for everyone else. A sound came out of Ruby that might have been a breath or a tiny sob. Then, very quietly, she asked, "Mom, what does a cheater's kid mean?" Everything in me went very still. "What?" My voice sounded wrong in my own ears. Too soft. Too careful. She glanced at the window one more time, then down at her shoes. "Grandma said it," she whispered. "She said, 'This party is not for cheaters' kids,' and then she said I'm one. So I had to stay out here so the real family could have fun." The words were small, but they hit like someone dropping a drawer full of silverware. "She said that?" I managed. Ruby nodded, once, quick, guilty, like she was bracing for me to be mad at her. I swallowed whatever sound tried to claw its way out of my throat. "Come here," I said, because anything else might have cracked me open on the spot. She stepped into my arms like someone had cut her strings. Her body was stiff from holding itself together too long. I wrapped my coat around her shoulders, warming her hands between mine. Her breath hitched against my collarbone. That was enough. More than enough. "Stay with me," I murmured. She nodded again. Then I turned toward the door. Not marching, not charging, just walking. Very calmly. Like I was delivering a casserole. Like nothing inside me was on fire. I rang the bell. It took a few seconds. I imagined Linda smoothing her sweater, adjusting her expression to the one she likes to use at church potlucks. The door opened. "Well, look who— Oh." Her smile dropped half an inch. "You're early." "I'm on time," I said. My voice was steady, which surprised even me. Why was Ruby outside? Linda blinked at me with that airy, innocent confusion she saves for when she absolutely knows what she's done. "Oh, she wanted to be out there," she said. "Fresh air. You know how kids are." "Fresh air," I repeated. She nodded brightly. "She could have come in whenever she wanted." Behind her, the party remnants were still buzzing. Kids talking, chairs scraping, someone licking frosting off a plate. A life Ruby had literally watched through glass. "Ruby," I said, keeping my eyes on Linda. "Did you want to be outside?" I felt Ruby shake her head against my shoulder. Linda's smile tightened. "Well, she misunderstood then. She got herself all upset. Sensitive children invent problems." "She said you told her the party wasn't for cheaters' kids," I said. "She said you told her she's not real family." Linda's expression flickered, just enough to show the truth before she shoved it back under something self-righteous. "I wasn't going to let her ruin Harper's day," she snapped. "I wasn't going to have that child in the photos. Do you think it's fair to Harper? Or to me?" My hands warmed Ruby's shoulders. They were the only thing keeping me from shaking. "So you left a 7-year-old outside," I said. "All afternoon." Linda folded her arms. "Actions have consequences, Lydia. Maybe if you hadn't made the choices you made, things would be easier for everyone." There it was, hung in the air like a rotten ornament. The thing she's always circling. The thing she finally said in front of my kid. "Okay," I said quietly. Linda frowned. "Okay?" "Thank you for being clear," I said. "I needed to hear it from you." Her mouth opened, probably to tell me I was being dramatic, or sensitive, or ungrateful, or something else she's been rehearsing for years. But I didn't stay. I turned, walked down her porch, held my daughter tighter. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I strapped Ruby into her seat, tucked the blanket around her legs, and kissed the top of her head. "Mom?" she whispered. "Are you mad?" "Not at you," I said. "Never at you." "Then who?" I closed her door gently. "I'll handle it," I said. She watched me through the window, eyes wide, trusting. I got behind the wheel, started the car, and pulled away from the curb with a calmness that felt almost surgical. I did something they didn't expect, and 3 hours later, their lives started to collapse. If you'd told me years ago that I would one day pull my daughter off a porch where she'd been exiled like a Victorian ghost child, I would have laughed, maybe cried a little from stress, and then reminded you that I'm not the kind of woman who ends up in that kind of family drama. But here we are. People always want to know when everything went wrong. The thing is, it didn't go wrong all at once. It went wrong the slow way, the quiet way, the way you don't notice until you're standing on a porch with a freezing 7-year-old asking what a cheater's kid is. So let me back up, but only far enough to make sense of the explosion. I met Miles at work. He's my husband now, which still feels strange to say out loud sometimes, considering the way it started. That's how this whole mess begins. Fluorescent lights, burnt coffee, terrible break room chairs, and a man with tired eyes and a polite smile that looked like it was held together by habit and caffeine. We were friendly coworkers first, the kind where you accidentally shine a flashlight into each other's souls during lunch breaks without quite meaning to. Then one evening, over lukewarm Chinese takeout, he said it. "I should tell you something. I'm technically still in a relationship." In my head, alarms went off like a Vegas slot machine. In real life, I just nodded and took a sip of tea like I had emotional insurance. But he didn't flinch. "It's basically over," he said. "Has been for a long time. I told her. She didn't want to hear it." He said it the way people confess to crimes they never meant to commit, more tired than guilty. And I believed him, not because I'm naive, but because everything in him matched the story. The way he talked about her, the way he talked about himself, the way he looked so defeated every time he mentioned going home. Still, starting something with him felt like walking a tightrope over a canyon full of judgmental family members. Spoiler. That's exactly what it was. What I didn't know then, but learned later in pieces, like finding puzzle parts under a couch, was that his entire relationship with that woman wasn't built on romance. It was built on pressure. His mom loved her. His sister loved her. The neighborhood probably had embroidered throw pillows with her name on them. Miles, meanwhile, felt like a supporting character in his own life. "Everyone said I was lucky to have her," he told me once, in the tone of a man reciting a eulogy for a relationship he never chose. I didn't feel lucky. I felt drafted. Imagine dating someone because your entire extended family has already fallen in love with the idea of you two. Imagine trying to break up and being told, "Are you sure? Are you sure you're not making a mistake? She's perfect. You'll regret this." Imagine hearing that since you're old enough to vote. So yes, I was the first decision he made for himself. His first act of rebellion. His first, "I'm doing this because I want to, not because you told me to." And his family reacted. Well, exactly how you'd expect a family used to choreographing their children's lives to react. For the first month, I genuinely thought things might be okay. Linda greeted me politely. Amber even smiled at me. His parents asked normal questions. Nobody hissed, nobody threw holy water. It was fine. Then the cracks started. A joke here. A long silence there. A look that lingered half a second too long. Someone teasingly called me a homewrecker in the kitchen during a holiday dinner. I laughed because that's what women do when someone insults them in a tone too light to fight properly. They didn't stop. It wasn't dramatic, not yet. Not even mean. Just sharp. Off. Like they were measuring me against a ghost and I kept coming up short. It was around then, when the jokes stopped being jokes, that Miles finally told me the part he'd been avoiding. We were sitting in bed, the house quiet, the kind of moment where truths slip out because lies take too much air. "She wasn't just my girlfriend," he said. "She was my mom's best friend's daughter." It hit with an ugly click. Of course, Linda wasn't mourning a breakup. She was mourning a legacy, a story she'd rehearsed for years. "And she still talks to them," he added, rubbing the back of his neck. "But it's strained. She blames me. And you. She thinks losing them ruined everything." He said it apologetically, like he was confessing weather he couldn't control, which honestly he couldn't. He'd been raised to keep the peace, to make himself small so his mother's world stayed big. Standing up for me, and later Ruby, required a spine he hadn't grown yet. Then Ruby was born, and visiting Linda's house became a master class in subtle humiliation. Amber's daughter, Harper, was the golden grandchild. Always first. Always praised. Always front and center. And the ex's child, yes, the ex's, was treated like honorary royalty whenever his mother or grandmother came by. Linda lit up around him like he was proof she hadn't lost everything. Ruby hovered, close enough to be present, far enough to be forgotten. At birthdays, she'd be handed the last cupcake. At holidays, she sat at the edge of the couch while the special kids took the spotlight. At one gathering, I watched Linda lift the ex's toddler onto her hip while brushing past Ruby like she was part of the furniture. And I told myself, it's subtle. It's survivable. She would never actually hurt her. I told myself that right up until the day Ruby stood outside a locked door, waiting to be let back into a family that never planned to open it. And that's when everything truly broke. If you've never filed a police report on your mother-in-law, I don't recommend it, but I also kind of do. Urgent care was the first punch. The police station was the second. There's something about watching an officer write down your daughter's temperature and the phrase, "forced to remain outside during family gathering," that makes the world tilt in this slow, surreal way. Like, oh, this isn't family drama. This is an incident. Ruby sat beside me, swinging her legs, wrapped in a blanket someone at urgent care had given her. She was sipping a juice box, pink-cheeked and tired, like this was the world's strangest after-school activity. I wasn't shaking anymore. I'd burned through shaking. The officer asked questions. I answered them calmly. Too calmly. The kind of calm that means a woman has passed the event horizon of patience. When it was done, he said, "We'll follow up." I nodded, thanked him, and didn't look back. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the sun was setting and my hands were ice on the steering wheel. Not from nerves, just from whatever happens to your body when your brain decides a whole new chapter of your life has begun. Miles came to the door the second I stepped inside. "Hey, how was—" He saw Ruby. He saw the blanket. He saw my face. His voice crumpled in the middle of the sentence. "What happened?" I handed him the paperwork. He read the first line, then the second. Then his jaw went rigid in a way I'd never seen before. "Exposure?" he whispered. "Emotional distress?" "She left her outside?" I watched the realization hit him in stages. Shock, disbelief, horror, guilt, rage, each one landing like a heavy boot on soft ground. "She did that to her," he said quietly. "My mother did that to her." I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to explain. He read the report again from the top, slower this time. Then he set it down with a kind of trembling precision, like if he wasn't careful he'd snap the table in half. "Okay," he said. "Okay." And in that okay, I heard it. The sound of a man stepping out of his old life and into a new one. A man finally choosing his wife and daughter over the shadow of a family he'd spent his entire life tiptoeing around. Without another word, he walked into the living room and grabbed his laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Ending it," he said. He opened our banking app. He clicked through screens with this terrifying calm. He stopped every recurring transfer, every monthly help, every emergency fund he'd kept filling for Linda. Years of guilt payments evaporated with a few taps. When he finished, he typed one short message on his phone. "Financial support is terminated." He hit send. "That's it," he said. "She doesn't get another cent from us." I sat down slowly, because standing felt like trying to balance on a tightrope in a windstorm. Ruby looked up from her blanket fortress on the couch. "Daddy, are you mad?" He knelt in front of her immediately. "Not at you," he said. "Never at you." "Grandma said I'm not real family," she murmured. His face broke in a way I'll remember for the rest of my life. "Sweetheart," he whispered, "you are my whole family." I was about to join them when his phone rang. Unknown number. Of course it was. He hesitated, then hit speaker. Linda didn't even wait for a hello. "Miles! How dare you do this to me?" Her voice blasted through the kitchen like a smoke alarm made of accusation and entitlement. "You cut me off? After everything I've done for you? After everything we've survived? And now the police are calling my house asking questions about your daughter." He didn't answer. He just stared at the phone like it had personally betrayed him. "How could you?" she shrieked. "She's lying, Miles. Ruby is lying. Your wife put her up to this, I know it." I felt Ruby tense beside me. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "She was cold because she went outside," Linda ranted. "Kids get cold. That's not a crime. And now, the police are at my door." So they had followed up. Not that Linda would ever admit what she told them. "Mom," Miles said quietly, "you left my daughter outside during a birthday party." "She could come in any time," Linda snapped. "She just wanted attention. And you ungrateful child, you dare cut off my money? Do you know how embarrassing this is? Do you know what people will think? Do you know—" He pressed the red button. The silence that followed felt holy. Ruby exhaled. Miles exhaled. I exhaled. Then he turned the phone off completely. I put a hand on his arm. "Hey," I said softly. "You okay?" He sat beside me on the couch, leaning forward like he needed to feel the ground under him. "I knew she played favorites," he said. I knew she didn't like you. I knew she still held on to the past. But I didn't know she—" He stopped, swallowed, shook his head. "I didn't know she could do that to a child." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. "And I'm done," he whispered. "With all of it. With pretending she's someone she isn't. With explaining away the things she does. With making excuses. With sacrificing you and Ruby just to keep the peace." He took my hand. His grip was warm, steady, certain. "We protect our daughter," he said. "From now on, no matter what." I nodded. Then together, we typed the final message. "We are no longer in contact. Do not reach out again." We hit send. Then we blocked every number. And the moment the last block turned green, I swear the entire house felt quieter, like someone had turned off a machine we'd all grown used to humming in the background. For the first time in years, it felt like the three of us were standing on the same side of the line. And on the other side, a storm gathering, one we had just refused to walk into ever again. I thought the phone call from Linda was the finale. Turns out it was just the overture. Her real performance started the next morning. I woke up, checked my phone, and nearly dropped it on my face. Linda had posted a Facebook essay, one of those pastel backgrounds with whimsical font that screams, "Gather round, I'm the victim now." It began with, "Some people destroy families and then use the police to punish grandparents." And it only got less reasonable from there. She wrote about parental alienation, cheaters weaponizing the system, and grandchildren being stolen. She mentioned me by name. Well, not name, but the kind of vague, self-pitying description everyone knows is about me. She ended with, "I tried to teach morals, and this is the thanks I get." If delusion had a fragrance, this post would have reeked of it. I was about to show Miles when notifications started popping like popcorn. Amber commented, "We all know what really happened." Some cousin I barely knew wrote, "Praying for healing." One woman chimed in with, "Grandparents have no rights anymore." I wanted to reply, "Rights revoked due to being a terrible human. Try again." But I restrained myself. Growth. Miles came out of the bathroom with his hair sticking up and said, "Why is my phone vibrating like it's possessed?" I handed him mine. He read the post once, exhaled through his nose, and said, "Okay. No, we're not doing this." He sat next to me on the bed, cracked his knuckles like he was about to defuse a bomb, and typed a response that was the emotional equivalent of a scalpel. For anyone confused, Ruby, 7, was told by her grandmother, "This party is not for cheaters' kids." She was kept outside for the entire party. No coat, no food, no access to the bathroom. She watched through the window. We took her to urgent care. Medical notes show she had been outside for too long and was emotionally distressed. He attached a redacted photo of the discharge summary. That was it. No insults, no theatrics, just facts. Linda's post was a fire. Miles's comment was a fire extinguisher, and suddenly, people weren't sure which way to run. A neighbor commented first. "I saw her outside when we left for groceries, and again when we came back. I thought she was just waiting for someone. My heart is breaking." Another person from church said, "I had no idea, but this matches other things I've seen." And then a relative, one who'd always stayed neutral, posted, "She's called my kids cheaters' kids during fights. We stopped visiting because of it." I didn't breathe for a solid 5 seconds. Then came parents from Linda's childcare circle. This was the part we hadn't accounted for, because we never treated her little babysitting side business like a real thing. It wasn't an official daycare, just 2 or 3 families from church who dropped their kids off a few mornings a week. Pocket money. Something she did to feel needed. Feel needed and wield power look very similar in her hands. But now those parents were seeing exactly how she treated children she didn't approve of. Messages started sliding in, screenshots sent to me privately. I'm pulling my daughter out. I can't risk this. I thought it was strange she never let the kids play outside unless she watched them like hawks. Thank you for posting the truth. And then, the church board is asking her to step back until things settle. So she'd lost. Her imagined moral high ground, her reputation, her childcare income, her church standing. The meltdown was already spectacular, but the universe wasn't done. Around noon, Miles's phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Put it on speaker. A calm voice said, "Miles, it's Walter." We both froze. Linda almost never talked about her brother. I assumed it was because he lived out of state and was busy being financially successful and emotionally stable, both things she resented in others. "I just saw the mess online," Walter said. "I called your mother. She's hysterical, blaming you, blaming Lydia, blaming gravity." That tracked. Then he said something that nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. "You know that house she lives in? The one where all this happened? It's mine." I mouthed, "What?" at Miles. Walter continued, "She's been living there rent-free for years. I paid the taxes, the repairs, because I felt bad after her divorce. I thought she needed help. Turns out I enabled her nastiest streak." I sat there stunned, because apparently this entire time Linda had been torturing my self-esteem inside a house that wasn't even hers. Walter wasn't finished. "I told her this morning she has 90 days to move out." Miles blinked. "You what?" "I'm reclaiming the property," Walter said. "She used my house to hurt a child. I won't be part of that." It was the most composed fury I'd ever heard from someone I'd never met. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "I want that house to go to Ruby." My brain short-circuited. "What?" I blurted out louder than intended. Walter chuckled. "You're there? Good. Yes, I want the house transferred to Miles, and eventually to Ruby. She's the one who needs security, not Linda." He went on. "If a child was hurt on that porch, then the least I can do is make sure she's the one protected by it." I covered my face with my hands because suddenly there were too many emotions fighting for space. Vindication, shock, disbelief, something dangerously close to gratitude. "Walter," Miles said, voice shaking. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take care of your family," Walter replied. "Say you won't let her near that girl again." Miles didn't hesitate. "I promise." "Good," Walter said. "Because she's already spiraling. You haven't seen the voicemails she left me. She's screaming about conspiracies and betrayals and how you were her only good son." I snorted. "She has one son." "Exactly," Walter said. "Anyway, the paperwork will be ready next week." He hung up. Miles and I stared at each other. He whispered, "She's going to explode." "Oh, she's mid-explosion," I said. "We're just out of blast range now." Notifications kept pinging. Linda had posted again, this time a blurry selfie of herself crying. "I've been betrayed by my own family." People were now commenting things like, "Wait, did you really leave a 7-year-old outside?" "This doesn't sound like parental alienation. This sounds like consequences. Taking advantage of your brother's generosity is not being betrayed." Her martyrdom arc was evaporating in real time. I leaned back on the couch, exhausted and strangely at peace for the first time in years. Ruby wandered into the room wearing pajamas with stars on them, rubbing her eyes. "Mom? Dad? Why are you staring at your phones like that?" Miles opened his arms. "Come here, sweetheart." She crawled onto his lap, warm and sleepy. "Are you still mad at Grandma?" she asked. I smoothed her hair. "We're not mad," I said. "We're just done." 6 months later, the world looks nothing like it did on that porch. Linda had to move out, just like Walter said. She's in a tiny studio 2 towns over now, the kind with creaky radiators and windows that look onto a parking lot. She lost most of her friends. Apparently, even the loyal ones scatter when the police call your house and Facebook calls your bluff. Amber didn't get spared either. Word spread. It always does. And suddenly, people knew she'd been part of everything. The whispers, the favoritism, the consequences. Harper had to switch schools after the other moms stopped inviting playdates. Funny how accountability always feels like bullying to the people who caused the harm. And then, in the middle of all that, 2 unexpected calls. The ex and her mother. Both apologizing, both horrified, both saying, "We never wanted this. We didn't know she'd gone this far." For once, I believed them. Meanwhile, Ruby is blooming. She laughs more, sleeps better, has a little group of friends who adore her. She goes to birthday parties where she's wanted, not tolerated. She never brings up her grandmother. Kids know when a chapter is closed. And us? We live in the house now, her old house. A place worth more than $300,000, gifted because Walter decided it should protect Ruby instead of hurting her. So what do you think? Did we go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more.